because at least in my experience with Haiti, you have people who have left 20, 30, 40 years ago and still imagine it in the way it was when they left it last. But the country has changed so much. Like cities, places change and evolve over time. And the expectation that people have when they return that everything stays exactly the same and that they'll be able to just pick up where they left off. And it's like, that's not how this works at all. And I think in conversations around migration and immigration, we can always get so focused on the sacrifice and the challenge and the obstacles, but we don't always get the chance to celebrate the wonderful things about where we come from and how they adapt and how they evolve for our circumstances and, what we get a chance to contribute to our new places.
Stories and Stanza is a podcast exploring creativity, resilience, and the transformative power of human stories. Through our two series, Between the Lines with creators and Fail With Me focusing on wellness and life's challenges, we bring you authentic conversations with inspiring voices from around the world. If you are drawn to meaningful dialogue that both comforts and challenges, follow us on YouTube or any podcast platform. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Stories and Stanza, where I am joined by writer Marissa Germain. Hi, Marissa. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I look forward to talking about you, your writing journey, the book that's coming, and all of it. And for anyone who has joined us for the first time, so in Stories and Stanza, I have two different segments. Between the Lines, where I speak to a writer about their craft, their challenges, their motivation, etc. And then there is another section which is called Fail With Me, about well-being, mental health, and all sorts of things around that. So if you are joining us for the first time, please like this video or leave a comment, follow the channel. Moving on with our episode today. So for our listeners, Marissa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Marissa, and I live over in the DC area of the US. And I have had a long career working in a variety of like program management, business operations roles. But my family history connects me to Haiti. And that experience brought me to the work that I did, also brought me to the writing that I've done. Um, yeah. So I think that's the quickest way to summarize my who I am and where I'm at.
That's wonderful. My motivation in this podcast is getting to know a writer about their creative quest, their journey. We are not all born as writers, but we grow as writers. We are going to talk about your new book. For our listeners, we will put the book link in the episode description. So if you like this discussion, I would encourage you to go and check the book out. So tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah. So the book is called It's Always Mango Season, and it is my very first novel. And to your point, right, you grow into writing, and that was really the journey that I went on with this particular book and on writing for the first time also. I had started the book, actually. I had left my job and wanted to start a business in January of 2020 at the start of COVID. And when I started to work on the business plan, instead of the business plan coming out, this novel started to emerge. It was influenced by the experiences that I had working in Haiti. It was influenced by my family's experience, and it was really an opportunity for me to explore what it is like and to kind of come to terms with being connected to Haiti. My parents were both born and raised there, but moved to the US. And I was born and raised here, and I had spent time in Haiti. My cousins had still stayed there and, built lives there. And I went and worked there for about a year. And while I was there, the story started to emerge for me about some of us leave, some of us stay, who gets to be Haitian, who gets to claim that identity and who doesn't, what are the different levels. And so that journey led me to writing a romance between a woman who has left and a gentleman who stayed. And they both have very different motivations for their lives and their careers, but then are kind of pushed together to explore, what does it look like when the two of them finally have some time to, explore what that relationship could look like.
As a immigrant myself, I can totally understand that psychology. This is a big part of my self quest as well. That you move from one place to another, then where do you belong? Where is your identity? Is it in your past? Is it in your present? Is it in your future? And being a father, that is a question I often get asked by my daughter, that where do we belong? How do you see yourself? I try to answer that you have to find the answer yourself. It's not some line written in sand. You can belong in both places. There
That's
is no right or wrong answer in this, like where you belong. It's you belong where your heart belongs. I think when you are publishing something, you have a core message that you want to give out to the world. You have something in mind, and no one knows that voice better than you. So, I want to hear a little bit more about your motivation. What is it that you are trying to communicate through your work?
ooh, that's a great question. I would say there's probably multiple messages and multiple layers. The first is Saskia's arc. She starts out in New York, has a huge career failure, and returns to her hometown and is trying very hard to fit into the box of proper 9 to 5 job at a bank. She is responsible. She is doing what she should be doing as an adult. But then when Paul shows up in the book, his challenges are kind of inviting her to open up her perspective on what she can do with her career and her life, and that it doesn't always have to be this very rigid A plus B will equal C. And personally, I went through that journey of like, I wanted to go ahead and to write this book, for example, and travel and all of that. And it took me a little bit of time at the start of my life to reconcile the desire for adventure and, being a responsible adult and being able to pay your bills. So the book is actually part of a series. And so there will be more books that will give Saskia some time to explore what it means to put aside what was expected of her and instead maybe possibly choose adventure, open up her perspective of do you go the responsible route or do you pick the adventure? And then Paul's journey, his journey is really kind of digging more into the sense of duty. Who are we responsible to and for? How much do we speak up? Do we not speak up? Do we try to keep home and domesticity in our families and our societies? Like, do we just try to survive and endure, or do we actually do something beyond just accepting the status quo and moving that way? So there are those two themes. And then there's the additional theme of, what are the frictions that emerge between the people who have left and the people who have stayed? And can they reconcile those differences and those changes, or can they not? And ultimately, I believe that there's always room for everyone and that we need to be more understanding of other people's experiences while, still maintaining boundaries and learning what those boundaries are, but giving grace to other people, learning how to work with other people, and being flexible is really, I think, maybe the key message of the book is that if you're flexible and you're open-minded, then your life will be able to take on new perspectives that you wouldn't necessarily have expected to pursue.
Thank you for sharing that. I request all my writer guests if they could share something from the book before we get to that point, because we brought up something very interesting, and personally, that's a topic very close to me as well, the human psychology of migration. And what I wanted to hear from you, and again, to our listeners, there's no right or wrong answer on this because today I see that it's a very opinionated world. So my belief is right and yours is wrong. I do not see it that way. I'm just curious from your point of view, the psychology of migration. Do you feel obliged that you have a responsibility to present that narrative in a correct way? Because I see in today's world these things can be molded in different ways, that oh, immigration is right, oh, immigration is wrong. There is a lot of discussions around that, and I just wanted to hear your take on this, that do you feel that you have a responsibility to represent this story accurately, and there is a motivation, and there is a responsibility of a writer.
Yeah, I will say that that was by far one of the most challenging parts about writing this book was to capture the various experiences of immigrating to a new world or a new place. And then, that question is posed in the book. Is it your responsibility? Do you stay? Do you go? Do you abandon your connection? Or do you continue, do you commit to it even further? One of the elements in the book is that the earthquake in Haiti takes place and it forces the two of them to stay closer together. Otherwise, I don't think the two characters would have spent as much time as they end up spending in the book. And I chose to use the earthquake because from my experience, the it was kind of like a moment where in the diaspora, you had folks who felt a sense of responsibility to go back to the country and help it. Then there were others who were like, you know what, we're done. This is it. Like clearly this isn't working. We're going to end our relationship with this country now, and we're going to just be done and move on. And Haitians specifically in the US, if anyone is paying attention, are a very common are commonly in the news in the US and have a very specific place in our narrative. And so I felt like it was really important to not take a strong position or a strong perspective, and instead just explore the different perspectives of the people who are there. So there's a lot of time spent with Saskia's mom and her father. Her mom more so than father. And their how they show up in the book explores a little bit of like what was the cost of leaving the country, and then also the expectation of when you leave, you're going to retire back at home where everyone else is, and you're going to see your family members again. And the earthquake and other events that have taken place in Haiti since has really challenged that perspective for a lot of Haitians. Like, can you go back now? Can you retire there? Maybe for a lot of people, probably not, which is, its own grief and its own ending in a lot of ways. And that informs, your immigrant identity, whether you continue to carry on the culture, the religion, the history, the identity associated with that place, or do you put that aside so that you can embrace whatever's going to come forward for you? So that theme is one of the undercurrents in the book and will continue to be explored because I don't think it's a fair I think one book is not enough to really explore the many layers of the psychology of migration, what you lose, what you gain, what you sacrifice, your perception of what a place is versus what it actually is. Because at least in my experience with Haiti, you have people who have left 20, 30, 40 years ago and still imagine it in the way it was when they left it last. But the country has changed so much. Like cities, places change and evolve over time. And the expectation that people have when they return that everything stays exactly the same and that they'll be able to just pick up where they left off. And it's like, that's not how this works at all. The people have changed, the environment has changed. There's been, maybe new buildings, new restaurants, new ways of looking at things. I mean, especially now with like technology, some of the older folks I grew up with had very, antique views of what the country is like compared to what it is now. And so I hope that that is a question that readers will kind of marinate on throughout the reading of the book on, what is our relationship to the countries that have shaped who we are. Because in the US, I mean, we love to hyphen our identities, right? Like you're Irish American or you're Ukrainian American, and it doesn't matter how far back in the generation you are, you still try to stay and maintain a connection to the ancestry and try to hold on to some of the customs. And there is a beauty in that, right? Because then you get to stay connected and see yourself as part of a bigger community rather than just the one that you are walking around it on a daily basis. So there's nothing, again, there's not like a strong perspective and there's not a strong opinion in the book about whether immigration is right or is wrong. It's really just kind of meant to explore the various layers, the various experiences, and what it means when you do migrate and what the impact can be on the people who have left and people who've stayed and everyone who's associated with that.
That's a very interesting take that you pose a question as opposed to give a straight answer that it is black and white, as opposed to this is something like a formation of a new identity and understanding ourselves. I really like that. Coming to the book, can I request you to read something from the book? It can be anything of your choice for our audience. And to anyone listening, this will give you an idea about the book before you can buy it.
Yes, you had given me this assignment and it was on my list and I had a hard time picking like what would be the best section. But if we're going to really spend some time thinking about immigration and migration and the costs of it, there's a section, I can either pick a lighter section about it. We'll pick the section that moves me whenever I read it. It is, there we go. Okay. So this section is kind of towards the beginning, middle of the book. The earthquake has happened, and Saskia and arrives home to her family, and her family go to their aunt's house to kind of figure out what they're going to do next, right? Because in times of crisis, families tend to and communities come together to address and process and figure out a plan of what is going to come. So Saskia has arrived at her aunt's house and they are going to figure out what they're going to do. On any other day, walking into Tatsi Marcel's house meant music, wax-infused smells from several candles, and a warm invitation from Tatsi to sit in the kitchen for coffee. The house Saskia walked into now was nothing like that. Instead, this house felt like an anxious airport where all the flights had been canceled. The collection of adults who shaped Saskia's life became abandoned passengers, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The normally level-headed, exuberant adults evaporated into tremoring elders hunched over their devices, praying to be spared from the worst. It had been 20 years since the Roys had left Port-au-Prince, and while they kept close ties with their families in Haiti, they needed support in handling the day-to-day and the holidays when it was too dangerous to journey home. This community eased the missing of brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and parents. Navigating the oddities of American life bound them together as closely as blood. To Saskia, this was her Orlando family, the people who had a joke at the ready for any ailment of the heart and made every graduation, every holiday memorable. From her chosen family, Saskia only knew love, warmth, joy, and safety. Normally, from the minute the door opened, the Roys would completely transform. Hair would come out of scrunchies and shoulders would relax. Voices would expand as they joined the vibrant tapestry that their community would weave with their individual mixtures of French, Creole, and English. Some would go up an octave and others down. Chuckles and giggles replaced breaths between words. Sentences never ended. Turns of phrase were never meant literally. Instead, they were the spice, a piece that turned a trip to the grocery store into the spiciest, most hilarious story of the year. And even if two people went on the same trip to the grocery store, the story would be completely different depending on who was doing the telling. Each person had their words that kept them connected to the lives they left behind. They would string into their own patterns, their own verbal comfort blanket. Papa used Creole when he told a joke. English and French were for reasonable political discussions. An explosive combination of all three were used if anyone dared to vend Duvalier, the father-son duo who left a bloody and controversial legacy. Someone always tried to defend Duvalier, and if anyone brought up Aristide, the house would shudder in the debate, the children hoping the wall survived. I can keep going. I can also.
You can keep going if you want to.
All right. Jacqueline expertly mixed French and English to demonstrate her years of grooming to be the cosmopolitan wife and mother of every man's dream. But give her enough crémasse, her favorite rum and condensed milk cocktail, and the Creole would start flowing like the crémasse. And if the zin or gossip was épicé or spicy enough, the Creole would dig in and be there pire encore. These moments were the unique threads that reminded them of the people they used to be. Doctors, bankers, engineers, the elite of a country made famous by its bygone glory and legendary suffering. At the time, each of their weddings were featured in the newspaper, Le Nouvelliste, and celebrated on Radio Metropole. They were small country celebrities, but when friends began disappearing and violence slowly crept from the poorer neighborhoods over their walls around their homes, all they could do was run and find safety. In finding safety, they discarded everything frivolous, anything too beautiful to lighten the load. They discarded everything they had until they could neatly fit into their new American boxes. They became convenience shop owners or permanently placed middle managers in a country with a tenuous relationship with skin color. They learned quickly. Keep your head down, and you might enjoy whatever you had built. As each family member released the people they used to be, the gathering habits changed too. At first, Saturday nights at Tati Marcel's brought the whole community together. The mothers would bring dishes that took days to make, creating a decadent feast that couldn't be found anywhere else in town. But as work hours went longer and kids' schedules grew busier, no one had days to prepare a dish, let alone an hour. These Haitians mixed spruced up Costco appetizers with those prized dishes, so the parties that went until sunrise could wrap up with the clean kitchen by 10:30 p.m. They adapted and did what they could to protect the slowly fraying connections to the country that had given so much, but had robbed them of almost everything else.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And your language is very poetic, very classy, and it is inviting the listener into the situation you have created. It's such a powerful moment, and I'm assuming that's a turning point within the book. So, thank you for sharing that. My whole motivation here in the between the lines section is when you're writing something, it comes to you with a voice. Like you probably told the story to yourself. So when you share that with the world, it's probably the most authentic version. It can become an audiobook, it can be any other form. But a writer's voice, that is wonderful and that needs to be amplified. And that's something I am trying to do in my humble capacity within this podcast. So, to the listeners, once again, I would request you to take a look at the book. I guess this gives you an idea what are you looking at. Of course, there are book blurbs, but that cannot do justice the canvas of creativity the writer goes through. I wanted to hear about your writing process, your craft. And I read that you wrote short stories previously, and this is your first novel. And writing short stories and writing novel are very different things. I want to hear about your journey in that space, how you shifted focus and how what more you learned as a novel writer, and what from your experience helped you become the writer you are today.
I will say that it was definitely the process of the short story collection helped me with the writing of this book. When I started, the very first draft of this book, I think was like 50 pages, which is not sufficient for a full book. And I kept like pulling at it and pulling at it and trying to like get this story out of my head and onto the page. And it was really challenging, and I wasn't able to like capture the tension that I wanted, and I wasn't able to build the suspense that I wanted. And then at the time I was living with roommates and we were watching Alfred Hitchcock's TV show. And I learned that each episode was actually based off of a short story. And so in watching a couple more of those, I was like, well, let me try writing a short story collect or short stories to see if I can learn how to build tension in a very short amount of time. Because if I can do it in a short amount of time, I can do it over across a chapter or over a book. And so again, this was all during COVID, so I started writing these short stories and I had friends and roommates look at them, and I would have conversations with them to see like where they were having understanding or where they felt the tension or if a story landed or if it totally did not. Um, and so that is how I developed the short stories. And then once that those stories were done, and then when I came back to the novel, it made it so much easier because I was like, all right, I now have like written, I don't know, I think I wrote like 12 to 15 short story, maybe less, somewhere in the 10 to 15 range. But in writing that many, it really started to refine my ability to build tension on the page and build tension in a scene, and was able to successfully do that and complete that.
Short stories have a very special place for me, and more so because of how it can become very thought provoking in the end. It always has to end in a way that you finish the story, but it makes you keep asking and exploring, right? Whereas in a novel, especially, you have picked up a very interesting topic, the psychology of migration, and I guess that ask will never stop, that will keep haunting yourself. In terms of preparation or challenges, can be either, of writing this book, would you like to share anything with our audience?
I mean, there were lots of challenges. There were lots of challenges, a lot, but most of them were, I would say a good bulk of them was the internal story and the internal narrative that I was telling myself about whether or not I should go on this journey or if I should just give up on the book and just, like Saskia, pick the certain path and stop investing in my creative and artistic pursuits. But I found that writing, no matter what capacity it looks like, is something that's really powerful. And it gives me the ability to explore and approach and reflect upon ideas, themes that you don't always like, you don't really get to that depth with friends always because we live very busy lives. And most of the writing I had done up to that point was professional, and so that's not really where you're going to reflect upon bigger things and bigger questions around, you know, what, what is the impact of migrating to a new country? And so this whole journey had a lot of failures and a lot of moments where I got really frustrated and said this was not going to be what I needed to do. But then, my life would adapt and change and give me space and time to work on the book. And the more I would share chapters or excerpts with friends, and like how when I would read back what I had wrote, how it would affect me, I was like, this is something that I need to share more broadly. I could keep this to myself, but I would talk to my cousin, my younger cousins, or to, other people when we are talking about like, the impact of migration and the impact of being young and trying to sort out your life. All of those things, I felt that this book would be the best way to share my perspective and also give like a way to reflect upon those types of themes in a compact place. And I also wasn't finding books like novels that really were getting at that. Like it was either really focused on, romance or really focused on action and adventure. And it didn't really, I had a hard time finding books that um, asked these deeper questions, left you with the question, and at the time, I felt like I found a lot of incredible works from Haitian authors that really focused on, the suffering and the challenges and the issues associated with being Haitian, but there weren't a lot of stories that were joyful, that were positive, that, you know, celebrated all of the wonderful facets of our identity. And I think in conversations around migration and immigration, we can always get so focused on the sacrifice and the challenge and the obstacles, but we don't always get the chance to celebrate the wonderful things about where we come from and how they adapt and how they evolve for our circumstances and, what we get a chance to contribute to our new places.
You mentioned that this book is part of a series where you want to see the story moving beyond the end of this book. And for anyone listening to this conversation today, would you like to share something that what are you working on for future and what can they expect?
Yeah, I have lots of things I'm working on. But I'll focus on this series. There is a second book this book started out as one book. And then when I went through the edits, I was like, I don't want to publish like a 700-page book. That's too long. It's too long. So I broke it up. We've got book one and book two. So in book one, Saskia and Paul spend their time in Orlando. Then will, uh, book two will spend a lot of time focusing on Paul's connection to the island of Haiti and a lot of the challenges that he navigates, um, in the new world that's been shaped by this catastrophic disaster.
I think we covered a lot of areas around the book, the idea, the motivation, the preparation, inspirations. We listened to you reading the book and what are the next steps. Do you think there is something that we haven't touched upon that you would like to share with the listeners today?
I will say that I did my best to give everyone in the book plenty of space to be who they are, flawed and everything. And that I hope that readers, when they get into the book, that they really enjoy it and take away the big question and, you know, have and take the time to explore what the book provides. I really tried to write something that readers can discuss with others and just, take some time to reflect upon.
Wonderful. Again, just to wrap up today's discussion, I'd like to say to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. You will find the book link both in the YouTube description as well as where if you are listening to this in a podcast platform, you'll find it there in the episode text as well. If you like this writer interview, then please check out the book and kindly follow us in any platform of your choice so that we can keep working with more writers in future. And thank you, Marissa, once again for such a wonderful discussion today.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.